I never thought that sitting in that hospital room, fighting for my own life, would be the moment my daughter betrayed me. The chemo drip ticked softly beside me, a cruel metronome counting down what little strength I had left. My body trembled, not from the treatment, but from the words I had just heard. "She won't need it much longer anyway," Lisa whispered. She thought I couldn't hear. She was wrong. I turned my head slightly, careful not to alert her. Through the thin curtain, I saw her lean closer to her boyfriend Matthew, a man I barely tolerated even on my best days. His eyes darted to the door, cautious, but his smirk stayed fixed. Lisa's voice lowered even more. "The transfer went through. Once she's gone, we're set." The sting was sharp, not because of my failing health, not because of the needle piercing my vein, but because the daughter I had trusted, the only family I had left, had already started dividing my assets like I was nothing more than a corpse waiting to be claimed. My breathing grew shallow. The betrayal sat heavy on my chest, thicker than the IV fluids pumping through my body. I clutched the thin blanket, my mind racing. How? How could she? Just weeks ago, I had signed those papers. Temporary power of attorney, she said, just to help me manage things while I focused on my treatment. I remember her gentle hands covering mine, her voice so sweet. "Mom, you need to focus on getting better. Let me handle the boring financial stuff." My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to sit up, to demand an explanation, but my body wouldn't cooperate. The chemotherapy drained my strength, but not my mind. My mind was suddenly wide awake, and what I saw was horrifying. I tried to steady my breathing, but I couldn't stop my hands from trembling. Was I imagining it? Was it just the exhaustion? But then my eyes caught the folder on the bedside table, the folder Lisa insisted on carrying everywhere lately, my financial documents, my inheritance, my husband's hard-earned assets, my safety net, my entire life's work. Gone? Did she already take it? Could she? My chest tightened, and I had to close my eyes for a moment. That's when I heard the boyfriend's voice, low, but clear. "Once that house sells, we're golden. It'll cover most of the startup." Startup? I felt like I was drowning while lying perfectly still. My own daughter. My own flesh and blood. The child I had sacrificed for, worked for, worried over, casually planning my death as if I was already gone. And worst of all, I had handed her the keys, the power of attorney. The access, because I trusted her. My mouth went dry as I stared at the ceiling, fighting the rising panic. No, I will not die like this. Not tricked, not robbed, not discarded. They didn't know yet, but I had just woken up. A nurse entered, cheerful and oblivious, pulling back the curtain to check my vitals. Lisa and Matthew quickly straightened up, their whispers ceasing as if nothing had happened. Lisa smiled sweetly at me, the same rehearsed expression she'd been using for months. "Hi, Mom. Feeling okay? I was just telling Matthew how brave you are." Brave. She said it like I was already a memory. I nodded slowly, forcing a weak smile. Brave, yes. My voice shook, but not from weakness. From rage. Before all this, before the hospital and the drip, before I knew the truth, I actually believed Lisa was stepping up. It was a quiet afternoon when she first offered to help. We sat together in my little living room, the familiar scent of jasmine tea curling through the air. The house was exactly as I had kept it all these years. Worn but warm. My house. My safe place. Lisa had brought pastries from that little bakery downtown, the one we used to go to when she was still in college, before she drifted so far from me. She placed the box gently on the coffee table, brushing away an imaginary speck of dust, like she was already taking ownership of everything. "Mom," she started, voice soft but practiced, "you've got enough on your plate with the treatment starting next week. Let me take care of the bills, the accounts, just until you're feeling stronger." I hesitated. My stomach twisted even then, but not from suspicion, from guilt. She was trying, I told myself, trying to be the daughter I had always hoped she could become. And I wanted to let her. "But honey, I've managed all this for years." My voice came out smaller than I intended. Even after everything, part of me was still clinging to control. Her eyes softened, like a patient mother soothing a child. "I know you have, Mom. You've done so much, but I worry about you." She reached across the table and patted my hand, the way I used to comfort her when she was little. "I just want you to focus on getting well. You shouldn't be stressing about property taxes or investment accounts." I bit my lip, trying not to cry. I had always prided myself on being strong, independent. But there I was, weak, bald from chemo, and desperate for someone to finally take care of me. "I'd need you to handle the bank access," I whispered, barely audible. "The insurance forms the house deed, if anything happened." She nodded eagerly. "Of course. I'll just need you to sign a few authorizations so I can act on your behalf." She pulled out a folder, neatly organized, with sticky notes marking where my signature was needed. "Temporary power of attorney," she explained. Standard stuff. Standard stuff. That's what she called it. She made it sound so small, so harmless. I signed everything. Every page. My hand shook slightly as I moved the pen, but I kept my smile steady. I wanted her to feel trusted. I wanted to believe that we were finally, becoming close again. Matthew was there that day too, sitting quietly in the corner with his coffee, saying very little. His presence felt unnecessary, but Lisa assured me he was only there to drive her home afterward. "You're really lucky to have him," I'd said then, not realizing the weight of my own words. "Oh, I know," she laughed, flashing that practiced smile. "He's been so supportive through all of this." Supportive. Yes, I see now just how supportive he was. After that day, Lisa came around even more. Always with flowers. Always with that smile. She brought fresh lilies one afternoon. My husband's favorite. I wondered if she remembered that, or if it was just another careful choice designed to pull at my heart. She sat beside me, brushing invisible crumbs off my blanket, adjusting my pillow just so, humming softly like she used to when she was little. "Everything's fine, Mom." I reviewed the statements. "Don't worry about a thing," she said, voice smooth like silk. "I even made sure your will is updated, just in case. You know, with all the hospital visits coming up," the words stung a little. "Just in case. Like the treatment was already a lost cause." But I nodded anyway, because I didn't want her to see the fear that gnawed at me late at night. The fear that maybe, just maybe, I was running out of time. And what mother doesn't want to believe her child has her best interests at heart? Lisa started handling everything. Groceries, bills, even answering phone calls for me. She made sure I rested. Always resting. Always out of the loop. "You don't need to worry about these little things, Mom," she repeated over and over, tucking paperwork away into her neat leather binder. "I've got it all under control." I didn't see it then. How smoothly she separated me from every piece of information. How easily she slipped herself into every role I used to fill. Power of attorney had made it seamless. She told the banks, the accountant, even my husband's old financial advisor, that she was now handling it all. And I, foolishly grateful for her care, let her. The boyfriend became a permanent fixture too. He always greeted me with that polished, syrupy politeness. "How's my favorite future mother-in-law today?" he'd say, placing a kiss on my cheek that made my skin crawl in ways I didn't understand yet. Looking back, I wonder how many times they laughed behind my back after they left my house with those documents. How many times they whispered about what would soon be theirs. At the time, though, I simply thought, at least I'm not alone. God, how wrong I was. It was a small thing, barely noticeable. During a routine checkup, while waiting for my blood work, I heard two nurses chatting by the station. Their voices were casual, not meant for me. So lucky her daughter approved the fund transfer so quickly. Her boyfriend's startup is really going to take off. I froze. Her daughter approved the fund transfer. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure I heard it right. My heart started pounding as if I'd just run a mile. My skin went cold. I shifted slightly in my chair, straining to hear more, pretending to flip through a magazine. She signed everything perfectly. No delays. "I wish my parents trusted me like that," one of them chuckled. The other laughed. Well, let's hope the boyfriend sticks around long enough to make it worth it. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. That wasn't a coincidence. That was my fund. My husband's legacy. The financial safety net he left behind for me. For my care, my home, my life. And they were casually discussing it like it was some generous gift Lisa handed over to her boyfriend. I wanted to scream, to rush over and demand answers. But my body stayed frozen, my hands gripping the magazine so tightly it started to tear. How much had they taken? How long had this been going on? Suddenly, every kind gesture Lisa had made replayed in my mind under a different light. The flowers, the tea, the sweet reassurances, the way she'd slowly removed me from every decision. It wasn't love. It was a takeover, and I had handed her the keys. I sat through the rest of the appointment numb, nodding where necessary, answering questions like a robot. My head spun with questions, but one thought kept slicing through everything. I need to find out exactly how much they've stolen. Because if what I suspected was true, this wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. The next day, I called Betty. She arrived that afternoon, walking up the front steps with the same steady grace she always carried. Betty had been my friend for nearly 40 years, longer than Lisa had been alive. We'd raised our kids together, buried our husbands in the same cold ground, and learned the hard way that life rarely gives without taking something first. She stepped inside and pulled me into a hug. I didn't realize how much I needed it until her arms wrapped around me. "Tea's ready," I said, forcing a smile. "And lemon cake." "Good," she replied, taking off her coat. "Because something tells me this isn't just a social visit." I didn't answer right away. Instead, we settled into the living room. The same living room where Lisa had tricked me into signing everything away. The silence stretched for a few minutes as we sipped our tea. The cake sat untouched. Finally, Betty leaned forward, her eyes narrowing gently. "All right, Margaret, tell me." I stared at my cup, feeling the knot tighten in my chest. My voice came out soft but firm. "I made a mistake, Betty." Her expression didn't shift. She just waited. "I gave Lisa power of attorney before the treatment started. Temporary. At least, I thought it was temporary." My voice trembled on that word. Betty's jaw tightened slightly. She said nothing, but I saw the flash of understanding in her eyes. I swallowed. Yesterday, at the hospital, I overheard some nurses talking. Apparently, she and Matthew have been transferring my money into some business venture. Without asking, without telling me, behind my back. Still, Betty didn't react. She simply set her tea down and folded her hands neatly in her lap. That was always her way. Calm first, furious later. "Do you know how much?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Not yet, but I know they're taking it, and I know I signed papers I didn't fully read." "Now," she exhaled, slow and measured, then finally spoke. "Do you have copies of what you signed?" I gestured toward the small file box sitting on the side table. "Everything they gave me to keep. Probably not everything I signed, though." Betty reached over, pulled the box onto her lap, and opened it with the methodical ease of someone who had spent decades reading contracts and fine print. Her eyes moved across the pages, her fingers flipping one after another in practiced rhythm. Minutes passed in silence as she read. Occasionally, she muttered under her breath, the way she always did when something irritated her. A tiny cluck of her tongue, a quick narrowing of her eyes. Finally, she sat back. "There's forgery here," she said bluntly. "Not all of these signatures match yours. And even if you did sign some of them, there are addendums attached later. They've extended the authority well beyond what you agreed to." I stared at her, my chest tightening. "They've been planning this for a while, Margaret. This wasn't just convenience. This was calculated." I felt my breath catch, the weight of it crashing down all over again. "Can they take the house?" Betty's eyes softened for a brief moment. "Not yet. But if you hadn't overheard that conversation yesterday, they might have gotten there soon." My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my cup again. "I feel like such a fool, Betty." "No," she said firmly, her voice slicing through my shame. You're not a fool. You trusted your daughter. That's not foolish. That's love. The lump in my throat nearly broke me, but I held it back. What do I do now? Betty's face grew sharper, her old paralegal instincts clicking into place. First, stay calm. Don't let them know you suspect anything. The moment they think you're onto them, they'll accelerate. You need to gather more. Quietly. She paused, lowering her voice even though no one else was in the house. You give me permission, and I'll start digging deeper. Quietly. Discreetly. I nodded, swallowing hard. Please. Her hand reached out and squeezed mine. We're not done, Margaret. Not by a long shot. For the first time in weeks, I felt something faint stir inside me again. Not hope. Not yet. But something like it. The days that followed were a quiet kind of torture. Lisa kept coming by, cheerful as ever. Too cheerful. She brought fresh soup, plumped my pillows, reorganized my medication box. Always hovering, always smiling. You don't need to worry about anything, Mom, she cooed again one evening. I've got the utilities paid, the mortgage handled, even checked on your insurance policies today. Everything's under control. Her words made my stomach twist. Under control. Yes, hers. I nodded politely, hiding my disgust behind a tight smile. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Betty was right. We needed evidence, not emotion. Every night after Lisa left, I sat at the old oak desk my husband had built, sifting through every document I could find. Bank statements, investment reports, tax filings, anything that might tell me how far she'd gone. There were gaps everywhere. Old monthly statements were missing. Several accounts were no longer reporting balances to my mailbox at all. I'd trusted her to go paperless months ago. Her idea, of course, save you the trouble of sorting mail, Mom. God, how blind I had been. The house was so quiet now in the evenings. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old wall clock. I used to enjoy the silence after my husband passed, a kind of peace. Now it felt like suffocating isolation. Like I was trapped inside my own home, completely in the dark, while my daughter gutted everything I had built. Lisa texted me constantly. Don't forget your 10 a.m. appointment, Mom. I reordered your meds. They're all set. Remember? Rest, okay? Don't worry about bills or statements. It was almost impressive, the level of performance. She played the concerned daughter with the same perfection as an actress delivering her finest role. But now I saw through every line, every kind word. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting her scheme. And soon enough, thanks to Betty's quiet investigation, I would finally know exactly how deep her betrayal went. By the end of the week, Betty had done what I couldn't. She sat across from me at the little cafe we'd always loved, her handbag resting beside her like a trusted partner. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She opened her folder and laid the papers down carefully, one by one, as if setting evidence before a jury. Margaret, she said quietly, they've been very busy. I stared at the documents, my name, my signature, scrawled across forms I had never seen before. These ones are outright forgeries, she continued, tapping several of the pages. The handwriting is close, but not close enough. The notary stamps? They're sloppy. If this ever sees court, it won't hold. I swallowed hard. And the transfers? Her lips tightened. A portion of your brokerage accounts were shifted into a private fund account opened under Matthew's business. The fund has your name attached as the, quote, primary investor, but you're listed as inactive on all management decisions. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. They used your own money to finance his business venture. I pressed my hand flat on the table, steadying myself. How much, Betty? Her voice softened. Almost $250,000. And that's just what I've confirmed so far. The room tilted slightly around me, but I held my ground. They're ambitious, she added after a beat. I'll give them that. I let out a bitter breath. Ambitious thieves, Betty nodded. They planned this well. They counted on you being too sick, too tired to notice. They're playing the long game, Margaret. The long game. That's what made my stomach twist the most. They didn't expect me to live long enough to catch on. They weren't just stealing. They were waiting me out. I stared down at the stack of papers again, my pulse steadying not from fear, but from something colder, sharper. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice low. Betty leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. "Now? Nothing. Not yet." I blinked at her. "Nothing?" "Nothing visible," she clarified. "You act like you know nothing. You let Lisa keep thinking you're still weak, still blind. That's your greatest advantage right now." She paused, lowering her voice even more. "Meanwhile, I keep digging. I'll get you a solid chain of evidence. Forged signatures, unauthorized transactions, breach of fiduciary duty, exploitation of a vulnerable adult. We'll build it, brick by brick." A faint shiver ran through me. "Won't they notice you're looking into it?" She smiled faintly. "Not the way I'm doing it." I looked at my friend, this woman, who had been beside me through every storm life had thrown. She wasn't just a paralegal, she was a strategist, a fighter. "Betty," I whispered, "why are you doing all this for me?" She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. "Because one day, it could be me. Or someone else we love. And because you deserve better than to be stolen from by your own child." For a moment, the lump in my throat threatened to break me. "I never thought it would be her," I finally said. My voice cracked. "No one ever does," Betty whispered. The waitress brought our coffee then, interrupting the heavy quiet. We sipped in silence for a few minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I spoke again, my voice more steady now. "How long will it take?" "A few weeks," she said. "Maybe longer. But we need patience. The more they think you're oblivious, the more careless they'll get." I nodded. "I can stay quiet. And when we're ready," she said, her eyes flashing with quiet steel, "we strike." The mask finally slipped. Lisa arrived that Sunday afternoon with an energy that felt different. She wasn't playing the doting daughter anymore. Not today. There was an edge to her voice, a kind of forced patience that clung too tightly to every word. She didn't waste time. "I brought some papers, Mom," she said as she breezed into the living room, dropping her designer purse onto the armchair like she owned the place. "Just a few precautionary things we should handle, for your peace of mind." My stomach twisted. I knew this was coming. Betty had warned me they would escalate. Still, seeing it happen, watching my own child treat me like an obstacle, was a pain I hadn't prepared for. Lisa sat across from me, pulling out a thick folder. "With your condition, we really should be thinking ahead." I kept my face calm, just like Betty coached me. "Thinking ahead?" "Well, yes," she said softly, flipping to the first page and sliding it toward me. "You know, just in case the worst happens." I glanced at the document without moving my hands. The title at the top confirmed what I already knew: Property Transfer Agreement. Her voice dropped into that sickly sweet tone she used whenever she was selling me something. "It's really just to simplify everything. If something were to happen, it avoids any legal complications with probate, tax filings. Matthew's been talking to a financial advisor." "Matthew." I cut in gently. "He's been helping you a lot, hasn't he?" The flicker crossed her face again. She covered it quickly with a bright smile. "He's just trying to make sure everything is secure for both of us. For you, Mom." I let the silence stretch, long enough to make her uncomfortable but not long enough to tip my hand. Finally, I asked, "And this would transfer the house directly to you?" "Yes." She said it too quickly. "But it's only to make things smoother down the road." I looked at her for a long time. This was my daughter, my child. And yet, here she was, trying to steal my home while I was still sitting in it, alive and breathing. "You really think we need to do this now?" I asked softly. Her smile tightened. "I just want to be prepared. You shouldn't have to worry about these things." Prepared. She couldn't even say the words out loud, that she was betting that I will not make it. I smiled, holding her gaze. "That's very thoughtful of you." Another long pause. She was losing patience. I could feel it rising under her skin. "Do you even understand how complicated this will get if something happens to you?" She finally snapped, frustration bleeding into her voice. There it was. I set my tea down slowly, letting the moment stretch just a little more. "I'm sure you'll manage," I said, my voice calm as ever. "You've done so well handling everything else." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She hadn't expected resistance. She thought I was still too weak, too grateful, too desperate. I stood then, keeping my movements slow and deliberate. "I'll think about it, Lisa, but not today." Her jaw clenched. "Mom, not today." I smiled again, the same way she used to smile, while lying to my face. But this smile was different. Mine held something hers never did. Control. She packed up the papers without another word. But I saw it. That flicker of anger, of panic. She felt it slipping. And I was just getting started. From that moment forward, it became a game of pretend. Lisa kept visiting, offering to go over the papers every few days, smiling like a cat circling its prey. Each time, I delayed. I asked innocent questions, requested more explanations, feigned confusion about legal terms. "I just want to be sure, sweetheart," I'd say, my voice soft, my eyes wide. "I'm not as sharp as I used to be, you know." She ate it up. My delays didn't trigger suspicion. They fed her confidence. She believed she was in control. Meanwhile, Betty and I worked quietly behind the scenes. I bought a simple voice recorder and started capturing every conversation Lisa initiated about the house, the accounts, the precautions. I let her talk freely. The more she spoke, the more evidence we gathered. "Just trust me, Mom. The lawyer already looked everything over. You don't need to bother yourself with these details." Her words were all there now, recorded, time-stamped, stored safely. Every subtle manipulation, every push, every hint that this was all about my protection. I even scheduled a fake second opinion appointment out of town. It bought Betty more time to retrieve additional copies of my account history and secure expert verification of the forged signatures we suspected. Every night, when I sat at my desk reviewing what Betty had uncovered, I could feel my anger sharpening into something colder, something stronger. Lisa had built her trap carefully, but she made one mistake. She thought I would sit quietly inside it. The lawyer's office was small, but clean. No fancy furniture, no pretentious art on the walls. Just facts, paper, and quiet determination. Exactly what I needed. Mr. Davis leaned forward, adjusting his glasses, as he reviewed the growing stack of evidence Betty and I had gathered. The recordings, the forged signatures, the financial statements with unauthorized transfers. It was all there now, plain as day. He exhaled through his nose, steady, composed. "Mrs. Callahan, there's no question they've committed fraud." Hearing him say it out loud hit me differently, sharper, more real. Fraud. That's what my own daughter was guilty of. The child I raised, the child I gave everything for. I folded my hands tightly in my lap, forcing my face to stay calm. "What can we do?" Mr. Davis tapped the edge of the folder with one finger. "You've been careful. That's good. Very good. The recordings will be powerful. They show not only the intent, but the ongoing deception. The forged documents make it even stronger." He paused, looking me in the eye. "But timing is everything." I nodded slowly. "We wait." "Yes." He leaned back slightly. "If we act too soon, they might move assets we haven't located yet. Or worse, start shredding evidence we don't know exists." My stomach twisted again. This wasn't just about catching them. This was about making sure nothing slipped through their greedy fingers. "How long do we wait?" I asked quietly. "As long as we can afford to." His voice softened. "The longer you stay compliant, the deeper they'll dig their own hole." I sat there for a long moment, letting the silence fill the room. My mind drifted back to all the moments Lisa had sat across from me these past months, smiling, lying, comforting me while she stole my life out from under me. She wasn't stealing my money, she was stealing my dignity. And now, piece by piece, I was taking it back. Mr. Davis's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "In the meantime, we'll start preparing injunctions. We'll file for immediate account freezes once we're ready to strike. But I won't move until you say you're certain she won't see it coming." I met his gaze. "She won't." "Good." He nodded, closing the folder gently. "This is not unusual, you know." I raised my eyebrows. Parents being betrayed like this? He offered a sad smile. More than you'd think. Elder financial abuse cases are some of the ugliest I see. I swallowed hard. It was a bitter comfort to know I wasn't alone. But it didn't make the betrayal any easier to bear. As I left his office that afternoon, the late autumn wind cut through my coat. I walked slowly, my breath fogging in the cold air. The leaves had turned by now, scattering dry and brittle along the sidewalk. Just like trust, I thought. Once broken, impossible to piece back together. When I returned home, I found another cheerful voicemail from Lisa waiting. Her bright, sugary voice filled the room. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. Let me know if you need anything, okay? Love you." I stared at the phone long after the message ended. The words were empty now. So rehearsed, so meaningless. Love you. What is love without respect? It's control. That's what it always was for her. Control dressed up like affection. I deleted the message without replying. Later that evening, Betty came by. We sat together in silence for a while, sipping tea, watching the fireplace flicker. "She called again?" Betty finally asked. I nodded. "Like clockwork. She's trying to keep you soft," Betty said quietly. "Keep you pliable. She thinks you're still too weak to fight." I smiled faintly, staring into the flames. "She has no idea how strong I've gotten." It began quietly, like all the best strikes do. Betty arrived early that morning, her coat dusted with a thin layer of frost. She came bearing folders, discreet smiles, and a quiet urgency beneath her calm. But there was something different this time. Not just in Betty's paperwork, in me. I was stronger now. The treatments had worked better than anyone expected. My doctors called it a highly encouraging response. My blood counts were up. My energy was returning. The weight that once dragged my body down was lifting. The sickness that made me an easy target for Lisa had loosened its grip. That day, Harris initiated the first quiet moves behind the scenes. Account freezes, property holds, asset flagging, all filed quietly under emergency protective provisions. The financial institutions barely blinked once the evidence of forgery was submitted. Lisa had no idea. While she texted me daily with her syrupy updates, "Made your next mortgage payment for you, Mom, don't stress," the walls around her scheme were already closing in. She was so sure of herself. Betty came over late that evening with the latest update. "The house is flagged. She won't be able to file any ownership transfer without triggering an immediate review now." I sat at the kitchen table, running my fingers along the worn edge of the wood. My husband built this table. We raised our family here. Every holiday, every birthday, every tear and every joy lived in this house. She really thought she could take it all. I whispered. Betty's voice was calm but firm. "She doesn't think you'd ever fight back." I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because I never did before. We didn't toast. There was nothing to celebrate yet. This wasn't victory. This was positioning. Lisa still thought she was walking me down a path of her choosing. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already splitting open. Every time she smiled. Every time she reminded me to trust her. Every time she laid another false brick in her little scheme. I smiled back and waited. Because when this finally broke open, she wouldn't just lose the house. She'd lose everything she thought she owned. They were halfway across the world when it happened. Lisa had texted me cheerfully just before boarding their flight. "Finally taking that much-needed vacation. Don't worry, Mom. Everything's handled. Love you." I stared at the message for a long time. The audacity of it. She was so certain she'd won. Certain that the old, weak woman she thought she controlled was safely tucked away. Ignorant, pliable. But while she toasted champagne in some overpriced villa abroad, her world began to crumble. At exactly 12:01 a.m., Mr. Davis triggered the first round of freezes. The brokerage firm's legal department moved fast, locking every account tied to my name, including the unauthorized private fund Matthew had been siphoning through. The financial institutions had copies of the forged documents now. Documented, time-stamped, irrefutable. Simultaneously, The county recorder's office flagged my property deed. Any attempts to transfer, refinance, or leverage the house now required my explicit presence and notarized consent. It was surgical, clean, quiet. By morning, the paper trail was airtight. I sat in my chair that evening, phone in hand, waiting. The house was still. The soft tick of the grandfather clock echoed through the quiet like a countdown. The first message arrived around 8 p.m. "Hey Mom, can you call me? Something's wrong with the account access." I didn't reply. 20 minutes later, another text. "Did you change your passwords? The bank won't let us through." Still, I said nothing. By 9:30, the call started. First, Lisa. Then Matthew. Then both. Over and over. Each ring was like a tiny drumbeat of justice. They weren't just confused, they were panicking. Good. I muted the phone and let it vibrate on the coffee table. By midnight, the voicemails turned desperate. "Mom, call me back, please. There's a huge issue with the business account. I don't know what happened, but if something doesn't clear by tomorrow, we're gonna lose everything." Tomorrow. I smiled faintly. Tomorrow was already here. I stood and walked to the window, pulling the curtains slightly aside. The moon was bright tonight, casting long shadows across my quiet front yard. The same yard Lisa once ran barefoot through as a child. The same yard she tried to steal with a pen. I whispered to myself, voice steady, "You only miss me now that I said no." The next morning, Betty called early. Her voice was steady but carried a flicker of satisfaction. "It's done." "Everything held?" "Everything," the brokerage confirmed. "Matthew's accounts are frozen. The house is protected. And," she paused, letting the weight settle, "your daughter's name is officially flagged in the fraud report." I let the silence hang for a beat before answering. "Good." We didn't need to say much more. We had built this piece by piece, carefully, patiently, and now it was all locked into place. But I knew what was coming next. The confrontation. Because Lisa, my daughter, would come knocking soon. And this time, it wouldn't be with flowers. They didn't even wait a full day after landing. The pounding on my door rattled the morning stillness. I stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the echo of their desperation settle into the walls of my home. My home. When I opened the door, Lisa stormed past me before I even spoke. Matthew trailed behind, his face pale and tight, jaw locked. Lisa's eyes were wild, wide with panic, but laced with something nastier. Anger, fear, entitlement. "Mom!" she snapped, spinning to face me in the living room. "What the hell is going on?" I closed the door gently, turned the lock, and faced them calmly. "Good morning." "Don't play games with me," she shouted. "The accounts are frozen. They're saying the deed is under some sort of protection hold. We can't move anything. They're saying you authorized all of this. Did you?" I didn't flinch. "Yes." For a second, it looked like she didn't understand the word. Like it didn't compute that I had finally seized back control. You can't just," she sputtered, her voice shaking. "You're sick. You're not thinking clearly. Matthew said this might happen. I cut her off, my voice calm but solid. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months." Her breath caught. She tried to compose herself, smoothing her hair back with trembling fingers. "We need access to those funds, Mom," she said, softening her tone like that would work now. "You know Matthew's business is depending on that capital. You agreed to help us." "No," I said sharply, my voice slicing through her lies. "You told me I agreed. You forged my signature. You manipulated me when you thought I was too weak to see it." Matthew finally spoke, stepping forward, his voice low, menacing. "You're going to ruin us." I met his gaze, my voice cold. "You ruined yourselves." Lisa's face twisted. "You don't understand how much trouble this puts us in. Do you want us to lose everything? The house, the business." I let out a small bitter laugh. "The house? The house you tried to steal from me? The house I paid for, maintained, and protected while you plotted behind my back? That house?" Her eyes glistened. Not from sadness, from fury. "We're family, Mom," she hissed. "You can't just cut us off like this." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a level so quiet it forced her to listen. "Family," I whispered. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't sit by my hospital bed and plan how to carve up my life while I'm still breathing." Tears finally welled in her eyes, but they were not from guilt. They were from losing. Matthew grabbed her arm, pulling her back slightly. "We should call a lawyer." "You're free to try," I said, motioning toward the neatly stacked papers waiting on the side table. "Everything is documented. Every forged signature. Every unauthorized transfer. Every recorded conversation." Lisa froze. "Recorded?" "Yes," I said, my voice unwavering. "I recorded everything, Lisa. Every meeting. Every word. Every time you sat here, smiling, lying to my face." For a long moment, the room was thick with stunned silence. Finally, Matthew's composure broke first. His eyes darted toward the door. He whispered something harsh to Lisa. Something about calling someone. About damage control. But she was frozen in place, her mouth slightly open, blinking like she had been slapped. I let them stand there, drowning in their own fear. "You thought I was weak," I said quietly. "You thought you could wait me out. You underestimated me." Lisa's voice broke into a desperate whisper. "Please, Mom, we can fix this." I shook my head, firm. "No, Lisa, you don't get to fix what you tried to destroy." The front door loomed behind them now, like a cliff's edge. "Now," I said calmly, "I think you should leave." They didn't leave on their own. By the time the police arrived that afternoon, Lisa's voice was hoarse from pleading and shouting, cycling between apologies, blame, and thinly veiled threats. Matthew paced near the window like a trapped animal, glancing at his phone every few minutes, as if some miracle call would come to rescue him. But no call came. The officers were calm, professional. They had copies of everything, courtesy of Mr. Davis. Fraudulent financial transfers, forged signatures, audio recordings that made even seasoned detectives shake their heads. "This is not a civil matter anymore," the lead officer said as he addressed them. "We have evidence of criminal fraud, unauthorized access to protected assets, and identity manipulation." Lisa broke then. The mask she had worn for so long cracked wide open. "Mom, please," she sobbed, stumbling forward, her hands clasped together. "Please don't do this. I made mistakes, but I didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to build a future." I stood steady, arms folded against my chest. My voice was cold but controlled. "You were building a future on my grave." Matthew didn't say a word. His eyes darted wildly around the room, calculating, weighing every exit, every angle. And then, like the coward I always suspected he was, he bolted. He shoved past one of the officers and made a desperate run for the door. 2 steps. That's all he managed before he was tackled and pinned to the floor, his phone clattering across the hardwood with a sharp crack. Lisa let out a guttural sob as she watched him dragged up by his arms. "Matthew, don't leave me. Don't!" But he didn't even turn to look at her. He was already gone in his mind. The officer secured him quickly, reading him his rights as he stood there, panting and sweating. I watched it all with a strange, detached calm. Not triumph, not gloating, clarity. For months I had sat in this same living room, weak and frightened, unsure of who I could trust. But now I saw it all for what it truly was. The love I thought I had from my daughter had always been conditional, tied to what she could take from me. And when she thought the well was running dry, she didn't hesitate to dig deeper into my grave. One of the officers approached me gently, his voice soft. "Ma'am, do you want to press full charges?" Lisa's tear-streaked face shot toward me, her eyes wide with desperation. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her, really looked, for the first time in months. This was the woman who once begged me for extra allowance in college, who called me crying when Matthew broke up with her the first time, who I held through the worst years of her father's abandonment. And now she stood there, alone, exposed, and terrified. Not because she had lost me, but because she had lost my money. I straightened my shoulders. My voice was steady. Yes, full charges. Lisa crumpled into a sobbing heap as the officers guided her toward the door, gently but firmly. As they pulled her away, her voice cracked through the quiet house one last time. "Mom, you don't love me anymore." I held her gaze as the words hit the air. "No," I whispered, voice calm. "I love myself now." And the door closed behind them. It didn't take long for the rest to fall apart. By the end of the week, Lisa had nothing left. Matthew was gone, vanished before his bail hearing, fleeing like a rat from a sinking ship. The business folded overnight once the financial fraud came to light. Investors pulled out, partners abandoned them. Their big future dissolved as quickly as it had been built. Lisa tried to stay in the house she once called hers, but of course she couldn't. The property belonged to me, fully protected under court order. The same home she tried to steal was now legally sealed against her. The eviction was swift. When they escorted her off the property, she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just sat on the curb again, hollow-eyed, her belongings stuffed into garbage bags at her feet. The same neighbors who once envied her now watched from behind curtains, shaking their heads in quiet judgment. No one helped her. And I didn't come to the door. I didn't need to. She had already made her choices long before this day arrived. That week, my lawyer finalized the full recovery of my accounts. Every stolen dollar traced, frozen, and returned. The damage wasn't small, but it was repairable. Thanks to Betty's tireless work, nothing slipped through their greedy fingers. I met with Mr. Davis one last time to sign the final paperwork. "It's over," he said, sliding the folder toward me. I stared at the pages for a moment, feeling something I hadn't allowed myself in months. Relief. Not the fragile kind. The permanent kind. The kind that comes when you finally shut a door that should have been closed long ago. I left his office lighter than I had entered. Not just financially. Emotionally. Free. The following month, I made a quiet donation, a sizable one, to a local charity that fights elder financial abuse. I requested it be anonymous. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew there were many like me. Parents who gave too much, trusted too easily, and paid dearly for it. If even one of them could find help sooner than I did, it would be worth every penny. I didn't tell anyone about the donation. Not even Betty. Some victories are best kept private. The chemo treatments continued, but my health stabilized. The doctors smiled more now when they spoke to me. My strength returned slowly, one stubborn step at a time. I even found myself tending to the garden again, pulling weeds, trimming hedges, planting new bulbs for spring. Life, I realized, wasn't something they could steal after all.